I'm Tomek. I'm from Poland, and I would like to talk about Scaled Agile Framework and the way we use it in our company. Maybe it's worth emphasizing I'm not SAFe consultant, so I have no. I just would like to tell you how it was in our company. Of course, I have some emotions about this, but I will try to be as objective as possible. Okay. Uh, One thing, I have to check my remote controller. Yeah, now it should work. All right, so I'm Tomek. I'm a software engineering team lead at a Swedish company called Seamless Payments. In the meantime, I'm also IT coach at Sagas, also a Polish company. Seamless is Swedish, but we have a software engineering department in Poland. I like collecting 3 characters long titles, and I'm a member of local Agile community. You can reach me at LinkedIn, for instance. That's my address. Feel free to challenge me afterwards. Okay, what I would like to tell you about today. First of all, I would like to tell you why we needed a change. Because we used to work purely in Scrum, but some things happened after which we failed using Scrum. And I hope it's going to be an interesting story for you. Then, how the change was made, because it's, of course, that's why you're here, I guess. And then what were the results of the change. And I will be getting back to those points during my speech. Okay. The key thing or the key thought I have about my presentation is that we failed at doing Scrum when we grew. It is us who failed. It is not the Scrum which failed. So us people implementing the Scrum. But even though we failed with that at some point of our development as a company, we still got the agile mindset, which was necessary to move forward. And being aligned with those values helped us to have a proper perspective on the way to proceed. Okay. I guess each of you has a smartphone. Question to you, do you use it to pay at your shops? Anyone? One person, cool. That's our product, Secure, the mobile wallet. Maybe you have heard of it, maybe not. It depends in which country you are. Anyway, it's a disruptive technology. It's pretty important to say that because we question how payments are done nowadays. Usually you pay with your card, whether it's credit or debit card, it doesn't matter. We question that and we bypass the rails, the card rails, which are now used. We challenge Visa and MasterCard. We connect directly to your bank account so that you could pay at shops. I can talk about it a lot. I just wanted to emphasize that, we are trying to change the payment reality in Europe and in the world. More about this I'm going to tell you in a second. Anyway, usually any talk about scaling should begin with how do you define a growth? And I would like to give you several perspectives about this. The first definition of growth, or our definition of growth, is how we roll out to certain countries. So in the middle of 2012, we roll out in Sweden, because we are a Swedish company. And I think we were one of the first companies in the world which make the nationwide rollout. And then the war began in a sense that investors said, okay, you got to roll out to more countries because they were the investors. So due to some business opportunities, a year after it was Romania. Then half a year after it was Finland. Then it was Belgium. Then half a year it was Portugal. And now on March, it was Netherlands, Germany, Spain, France, and today, that's today's release notes, it is Italy. So these 5 countries, they were released in this month. As you can suppose, it is due to the way we reorganized our work, but it's not only to that, because there's lots of technological improvements. There is DevOps stuff we did. So, of course, not all credit goes to scale the framework, but for sure it helped us. And it's really hard to judge how much. Anyway, let's go further on. Another definition of growth. When we rolled out to Sweden, there was 50 of us. Now it's around 200. So it's like we increased its size by counting the number of employees 4 times in 2 years. Okay, another definition of growth. How many consumers, or what is the potential consumer base of our product? When we roll out to Sweden, it was around 10 million of people. Of course, this is not the number of customers we have. This is just the potential number of customers we need to take into account when developing our product. Now it is around 200 million consumers, counting all the countries. And because we plan to roll out to UK and USA, it's going to be 600 million people pretty soon, which you need to take into account because these are your potential customers. Okay, so we have 3 definitions of growth. And one thing is like taking care of your customers, their number, their diversity, because people in the US do payments differently than people in Europe. For instance, in the US, people still use checks, which is pretty astonishing. Have any of you used checks like for a year, last year? Yeah, people in the US, they do it. So we have a diverse consumer base, that's one thing. The other thing is the number of employees. There's 4 times more of us, so the company culture changed as well. And this is like a blow to the company that suddenly, 4 times more people enter the company, and actually who is defining the culture of the company? Is it this old 51 people who still remember what it used to like to be, or this 150 people who has their past experience and entered the new company? And this is a reason actually for change. And as you can guess, most probably, the mechanisms or the way you've been working till that moment doesn't apply to the new reality. Okay. So this is why a change was needed. And I also decided to analyze it from 3 perspectives. The first one will be, let's analyze it from the Agile expert perspective, and what we did back then, and what caused us or what triggered a change in our company. So initially, we started using Scrum around 2008. And of course, as every company, we were learning throughout working. We made a lot of mistakes. One of those mistakes was that we had a team, as you can see, consisting of developers, Scrum Master being a developer as well, which is, of course, now we know it's bad. And there was a separate team of QA people. And quite obviously, if you don't see the notations, the red person is a product owner, the green one is the Scrum Master and the developer, the blank ones are the developers, and the blank women are QA people. Okay. So let's move forward. What was the problem with that solution? The problem was that QA was a bottleneck. Of course, here there are 2 teams written or drawn, but there were more of them, and there was one team of QA people. They were a bottleneck. So natural conclusion, what would you do in such a situation?
Testers to the teams.
Exactly. So we did that. So we removed the QA team. Testers, they joined the other teams. Yeah. Of course, this solved one problem, but another problem arose because there were other problems. When we started to grow, of course, the number of teams grew, the number of product owners grew, and the way it was organized was in a way that product owners were giving work to people or to the teams. And I think Scrum doesn't tell you much how you should handle in this situation. It is usually the coach, which is in the company, which has the wisdom, which has the experience, which tries to organize the process in a way to to work effectively. But anyway, when we grew, when we started to deliver more work, there were lots of interdependencies between the teams. Not only in terms of personal relationships, like someone knows better something than the other person, which is in the other team, but also just dependencies between responsibility on the components. Craig said quite a lot of wise words about this today. And the problem we faced was, first of all, some problems or some bugs were discovered once we entered production environment with a given feature, which was very bad. Because if you agree with me, don't mess with the customers. Very often you have only one chance of delighting your customer. If you don't delight the customer, especially in this type of business, when someone downloads your app, registers, makes a first payment, let's hope that that person will make the first payment, and then the question is if that person will make the second payment. Because very often people download the app, try it, and never get back. So that's why I say don't mess with the customer, because usually you have only one chance to delight him. If you lose that chance, then most probably that person won't get back to you. So some problems were discovered after entering the production, because it seems that there were some communication problems between the teams. And actually, the first problem stemmed from the second problem, which is lack of situational awareness. Teams didn't have the full picture of what is happening in the company. So they were, because the work to them was delivered by the product owner, so they were only aware of this tiny bit of the work they were doing, but not of the whole situation in the company, and the vision, the strategy. This, of course, led to frustration of people, because they were doing a great job. They were really trying to do their best, and it's not because of them why the process failed. Edward Deming said that 85% of all problems with people are not because of the people, but because of the system they are working in. And I think this was the reason why people got frustrated, because they knew that even though they are trying really hard, it is the system which made them fail. And the last thing was lack of purpose. Because there was lack of situational awareness, people just had no purpose to work, in a sense like, okay, where are we going to, or where are we aiming at, in a perspective farther than, I don't know, a sprint or a couple of sprints. Of course, it's also connected with motivation theory. If you read about the book about Pink, then of course he also writes about having a purpose at work. Okay. Sorry. And the last thing, maybe you noticed that when I was saying that product owners were assigning tasks or user stories or features to teams, this was actually a push system. I will get back to this when describing the results of the change. But anyway, it was product owners pushing the work to the teams. Okay. So this was an Agile expert perspective. Now let's move to the marketing expert perspective. As I told you, we are creating a disruptive technology. And some time ago, Geoffrey Moore made a research into disruptive technologies and why they fail so often. Usually, if you are a startup, you create this kind of disruptive or discontinuous technology. First users are kind of innovators. They are geeks. They like using your service. They want to test it. Then if you start succeeding, you are entering the early adopters phase. And then I think this is the most crucial part, when those early adopters needs to go to their grandmas, parents, and tell them, hey, look what a cool mobile payment solution I have. Start using it. And if your early adopters start convincing other people and those people start using your service, then they are early majority. And unfortunately, most of the companies fail when transforming from early adopters to early majority phase. Because early majority, these are completely different kind of customers. And this is exactly where we were at, because different kind of customers means different kind of work. And we were working with Scrum since 2008. In 2013, it was the moment when we started to feel that something is going wrong. We were doing Scrum of Scrums, because that's the usual you do it when you have lots of teams. And we had a gut feeling that if we continue on working like this, so start doing Scrum of Scrums to the nth power, we will fall into the big scary chasm, which generally means going bankrupt, or investors stop believing in you. Okay, so now let's look from the third perspective. The first one was Agile expert, the second one was marketing expert, the third one was management expert. I guess I don't need to convince anyone how organization, the way it's built, influences the work. Even Craig said that culture goes after organization, right? So the way the things are organized really influences the way you work, especially in big organizations. Anyway, if organization or companies, they grow, they usually go through more or less the very same phases. And there was a research about this by Grainer, and apparently it more or less applies to most of the companies when they grow. When they become more mature, there's more people. Grainer made a research about this, and when I learned about this research and like started looking at the company I work in, it made a lot of sense to me. Let me focus on the very first two phases. The first phase is a crisis of leadership, because usually when there is a startup, there is a charismatic leader, technical leader, there's like a bunch of 5 or 6 people they can manage on their own, they move forward. But when there is a success and the company needs to grow, what happens usually is the crisis of leadership, because the very single person becomes a bottleneck in the company and starts to micromanage people. So the obvious solution to this is, okay, let's give autonomy to people. Because I'm as a CEO of that 5-people company, cannot handle everything on my own when the company grows. And it's pretty natural way of handling things. But when still you succeed in the way you work, and the company grows even more, then then autonomy crisis takes place, which actually happened to us. The teams, because we are working in Scrum, and we really believed in this, and we still believe in this, the teams were given a lot of autonomy. But this means, as I told you, lack of situational awareness, lack of purpose, because they were so autonomic, but there were problems in communication between the teams. And this resulted, for instance, in using 3 technologies for solving the same problem, each of the technology used by another team, so lack of architectural consistency, up to these problems we faced on the production environment. Not on the staging environment, not on the development environment, but only when we integrated our work or it was being used by actual customers. The trick is how to deal with the autonomy crisis. Okay, I will leave this question unanswered. So I hope I convinced you that when we started to grow, we failed at doing Scrum. We just couldn't do it the way we wanted. The problems we had, they were just too big for us. So it was a time for a superhero to save us. Everyone in the company felt that, okay, if we don't change the way we work, we are really in big problems. And we're trying to find a solution for how to cope with this situation. And usually what companies do, they hire Agile coaches. The Agile coach we hired, it was, by the way, Mikko Lundgren from Sweden. He had experience in helping Spotify, scaling up from industrial companies. And his person, I mean, he brought Scaled Agile Framework to our company and brought lots of Lean concept into our company. because till that time we focused so much on agile concepts. Okay, so how a change was made? Bearing in mind the problems we had, we decided to work on 3 layers as a whole company. There was a strategic layer, there was a tactical layer, and there was a team layer. As you can deduce, strategic layer is the place where the management of the company takes strategic decisions. Tactical layer is the way to realize those decisions, and team layer, let's call it Gemba layer, so where the actual value or addition of value takes place. Okay. So on the strategic layer, management had their business epics. Architect had its own epics, because architect had to tell management that, okay, if we don't make those technical investments, if we succeed, we'll fail immediately afterwards, because, for instance, we won't be able to sustain such a traffic. And by collaboration of management and architect, one common backlog was created, consisting of both business epics and architectural epics, technical epics. This, in turn, epics from the backlog were taken by product management and were divided into features. And it was product management trying to divide those epics into features, which makes sense. And those features, by definition, we try to put some cadence on our work and try to release stuff on cadence. So with a given tempo, with a given rhythm, but of course, this is not how reality usually looks. There is, of course, we try to do it on cadence, but of course we accepted that there may be situations in which we have to release just on demand. Because business environment changes, because there are some regulational changes, because our competition did something, and we have to react to this. That's why we have also releases on demand. What happens on the team layer? On team layer, teams, they take things from the backlog, from the feature backlog, and start working on them. And here, the Scrum, as we know, takes place. So thinking about giving the increments of value, thinking about short feedback loops, self-organizing teams, it all worked on the team layer. And you know what? I think I'll explain you how Scaled Agile Framework works. Although the original diagram, which I hate, looks like this. I do hate this. It's really complicated. Dean Laughingwell, the person behind Scaled Agile Framework, says, okay, you don't have to do all of this. But if you want to sell something, sell an idea, it cannot look like this. Come on. So getting back to my diagram, much simpler one. It's not the full story, because we also added some custom elements which we believe are in perfect accordance with Lean concepts and Agile concepts. First of all, what we introduced, facing the problems of lack of situation awareness, we introduced a tool called Tetris Planning. That's a pretty slick tool. On the vertical axis, you can see teams. On the horizontal axis, you can see time. This is a way of visualizing how we work in time, so what we plan. The type of business we are running is pretty dynamic, so we plan only 2 months ahead. And each team pulls tasks from the backlog and decides what to do, in what order, taking into account the priorities set up by product management. Of course, priorities may change because there are some technical dependencies which are impossible to guess by the product management, because usually these are the business people. But anyway, it is the teams who have the knowledge, have the experience to say, okay, if we want to realize this particular feature, we need to, I don't know, there's some time dependency between features. And for instance, there is also, everyone in the company has a way to see that the Mercury team and Copper team, they are working on the same epic. So the level of situational awareness increases much more, because suddenly everyone in the company, by the way, we have it in a Google spreadsheet, and it's everyone in the company, even CEO, takes a look at what's happening or what teams are doing. Sees the time dependencies and sees what's happening and which teams needs to collaborate. But this is not any manager, any product owner telling, okay, these two teams have to cooperate. It is the teams by weekly meetings, they decide together, okay, we have to do it together because there is some dependency, technical time. Yes?
How did you do the planning on where to put the different epics?
As I said, we have a weekly meeting. There is product management on those meetings. There is teams. They pull tasks from the backlog.
Okay, weekly.
Weekly, yeah. How many teams? I think it was 8 or 9. But we heard from, it's from Scania in Sweden, that it could be like even 100 teams. But this is only what I heard. This is not what I experienced. So, and these meetings, of course, it depends, because some problems can be discussed later on, because it appears that we need like an hour to discuss, okay, this is a very complex topic, we need to have a dedicated meeting for that, and that's fine. But on weekly meetings, which take around 15 or 30 minutes, every team goes through what is doing, what's happening, and if there are any new dependencies pop up. Because as you remember, one of our biggest problems was that there were bugs found on production, or maybe not even bugs, just incompatible stuff working on a production. Maybe not like API being divergent, but just functionality is not working. Okay, so this is one tool. The other tool we introduced is the so-called capacity matrix. This is also filled by the teams, and yeah, let me explain how it works. First of all, we got teams on the top, and we have features in the horizontal axis. And what is done by the teams is that they indicate to the management what's happening. So the gray area means that, okay, we will be working on this in the future. That's just an indicator that that team decided to take this feature to implement. Green means that we are doing it, and we are doing fine. We as a team, we will deliver given feature on time. This is a commitment from the team to the management. The red rectangle means we as a team, we want to make it on time, and we cannot handle problem on our own. We need management to help us. And I don't know if you see the mindset change. It is the management who is there to help the teams. It is not management who is like going to the team and asking, how is it going? Will you make it or will you make it not? Because then if the number of teams grow, then the number of managers in the layer also needs to grow accordingly. And here, by this very simple tool, very simple visualization, I would even risk a statement that this is a lean concept. Management reacts only when there are troubles. And those happen, but usually don't happen that often. So the scalability of the solution implies that maybe there can be more teams with less management on top. And actually, our company has a pretty much flat structure. Okay. And by the way, this diagram or this spreadsheet is filled by teams as well. So it is, yes, question?
Tell more about your flat structure. So do you have team leads?
Okay. If someone is hired in our company, he's either a software engineer or QA engineer or sysadmin. But we are also aiming to even make it more flat in a sense that to become product developers, as Craig even said during his keynote speech. There is no like junior developer, senior developer, and so on. I'm a team lead, and I'm the only team lead in the company in a sense that this is an experiment. And actually, my job is to, for part of the teams, to make them aligned, to give them to set up a vision, to set up values they can follow, so that they can make decisions based on the values which are set for the teams. But it is not a managerial position in the sense that I'm ordering someone a work to be done. Head of software development department, which is also a boss for other teams, not the ones I'm taking care of. And that's the whole structure. CEO. Yeah. So yeah, my role is a bit experiment of me being a team lead, trying to align a couple of teams together. Yes, question?
I'm trying to figure out the capacity matrix.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a situation report, like how are we doing?
Yeah.
So it's not so much about capacity, but about how we're doing.
Yes, and how do you define capacity?
Yeah. I figured that the previous one, which has to do with do we have space for this epic or not, would be kind of capacity. That if there is 3 slots, then there is capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Okay, apparently I understood it. Would it be possible to combine these? I mean, both have teams and epics.
Yes, but they serve different needs.
Okay.
The first one, the Tetris planning, is for the teams to organize their work and to visualize it, because we believe that visualization is one of the key concepts. No one needs to go and ask the teams what they are doing. No one needs to go and ask the teams how they are handling. It's just there. Being transparent, one of the Agile values, right? The same goes for capacity matrix, but capacity matrix is to check the timeline and check the deadlines in a sense, will we be able as a company to deliver something? And the most crucial thing is this red rectangle, which is an indicator for the management to start, working with the teams and helping them, because there are some problems which teams cannot solve on their own. If they can solve the problems on their own, there is no need for a red rectangle, because they are doing them themselves, right? Self-organization. Okay, let's move forward. One more change, or the change we introduced in our work, was on the team level. What we did, the setup is more or less the same, apart from the fact that we learned that Scrum Masters, you cannot be a Scrum Master and a developer at the same time. So there is a dedicated role of a Scrum Master in our company.
So
Yes?
there is this person in the team, right? In every team.
What do you mean by this person?
Going back to the structure.
Yes?
Question. You have Scrum Masters.
Okay, yes, we have Scrum Masters, but they are not anyhow in a superior role to the team. They are not their managers, bosses. I would more call them Agile Coaches, and this is even how they are defined in a job advertisement, like Scrum Master / Agile Coach. They are to help the teams, and not being directly involved in their work, give them a proper perspective to see how they are operating and what may be the problems. Yes?
Why you said that being a Scrum Master is a bad idea to have a developer as a Scrum Master?
Okay, it's not a bad idea in general. In our company, it was a bad idea because that person was involved in the work. And it's even like in people interaction. If you're not, somehow it worked in our case that that person could say, give some negative feedback without any emotions and not also getting, negative emotions from the other people, right? Even such, simple cases. Yes?
I can support your case that in our company as well, we found out that such a person rarely acts as a Scrum Master, but might act as a Scrum Secretary.
Some secretary.
Keep the
Yeah.
Scrum going, but the team doesn't improve.
Yeah, exactly. So that person, yeah, that's very good point, which reminds me of our case. That person was more like keeping track if the Scrum ceremonies are taking place, but not helping the team to improve as a team and individuals as well. So that's why we say it's a Scrum Master / Agile Coach. Anyway, what changed in the form we worked as a team, as teams, was that product owners they committed things to the backlog, and teams were taking things from the backlog, as they think it's best to deliver a given feature or given value. And this is a pull system, right? No one orders teams to do. And usually when I see companies where the work is ordered for the teams to be done, now I know that this is high underutilization of people, because look, there's one product owner and there is like a team which is a bunch of like 4, 8 people. Always 8 people will have greater knowledge than one person. And usually it is the teams who know how to do stuff and what are the dependencies. Of course, they need to cooperate with product owner, because we are one company, we have the very same goal, but it is the teams who are empowered more than the product owners. Product owners are responsible for optimizing the business value, which can be brought with given number of people in a given time. Yes?
Who was responsible for quality?
Who was responsible for the quality? I mentioned QA engineers, but QA engineers, they are like QA leads. They set up some standards within a team or globally within a company, but it is the whole team which provides quality. So the whole team tests. The fact that there is a QA engineer in the team doesn't mean that developers develop and QA people test, because you have an internal waterfall inside the Scrum. QA people, they, for instance, make a research on some automation framework, write some initial tests, coach team members how to write those tests and what should be the approach, and also measure the quality to be able to tell the product owner that what is the quality of the solution, and then the product owner may take a decision if it should be released to production or not. Yes?
Okay, so the product owner does the decision, the trade.
Yes, of course. Sorry,
Don't worry, all the stuff that you said was good, and I agree with it.
Uh-huh.
Just I was wondering who makes the call.
Yeah, eventually it's product owner, and product owner is part of product management team.
Accepting actually the feature, yeah?
Yes, during the review.
One question about this picture. On this picture, you're showing that one single backlog and two separate product owners, as I understand it, different people. But if different people control the same backlog, who is the main people who take the decision? What has much high priority?
Head of product management. There's one.
It's a group with a head.
Yes, of course. I'm not an expert in saying how product management or product owners scale, but of course they have their problems to solve, or we have their problems to solve because we are one company. Yeah, mainly the problem was still on our side initially. And actually now what we are doing, those Scrum Masters and Agile Coaches, now they focus their attention on product owners to help them cooperate with the teams. So that's why they are Agile Coaches, I would even say, internal. Okay. So I hope I also convinced you to the second part of my statement, that even though we failed at Scrum at a given point of time, we were able to still use Agile concepts and Lean concepts to move forward. And of course, it's hard to convey this in a 40-minute talk, but we still, on this team layer, on this Gemba layer, we're still working Scrum. Yes?
Quick question. Could you please?
Yeah.
And you didn't mention what is the role of Scrum Master on this diagram.
He's working with the teams as an Agile coach in all those. First of all, of course, the basic responsibility, which is just keeping track that all the ceremonies happen. But that's like basic level of Scrum Master. Yeah, the process. If like setting up scrums, retrospectives, planning sessions, grooming, far ahead, and all the stuff. But more importantly, of course, this is the basic or the fundamentals which needs to be done. But more importantly, his role is to be a coach to the teams, to be able to show them, okay, guys, this is the problems which I see. For instance, amount of handovers of work which is done when releasing something to production, which makes information loss on several steps, and that's why we're having problems on production, for instance. he helps them. It's good when he doesn't tell them what is the problem. It's good when he motivates or inspires them to find the problem, because this is only when the teams can truly learn from their bad decisions, right?
Yeah.
So and of course they are responsible for even their interactions within the team, right? They're like really coaches. So it's I don't know what's your experience in your companies, but this is, I think, the role of, this is how I see even the role of Scrum Master, this kind of Agile coach, working with the teams.
Do you have one Scrum Master per team or 2 for 5 teams?
In our case, it's one Scrum Master for 2 teams, and it works pretty well in terms of job to be done for both teams. There's one case when there's one Scrum Master for 3 teams, but we would like to hire one more because it's just too much for one person.
One more
Yeah.
question. And do you think it is obvious to have the same process established in all the teams? Did you get what I mean?
What do you mean by?
I mean, the means by saying the same process, I mean, everybody should follow the same. Follow the
So
same rules,
unified
yeah, the same board type, the same issues types.
Mhm. I understand. Of course, there's a question between how much autonomy should teams have and which parts should be aligned. As far as processes are concerned, we are pretty strict about this because we like to do agile. So, for instance, there needs to be daily Scrum, there needs to be retrospective, there needs to be demo, there needs to be planning, there needs to be grooming for just to play with the backlog. But for instance, no one says when it has to happen. Some teams would like to have daily Scrum afternoon, some in the morning, for instance. Also, working with Tetris planning, working with capacity matrix. If you are responsible for a software engineering department, there has to be some guidelines which you have to impose on people. But how they're gonna implement this, they know best. Yeah. Okay. I'm almost done. Yeah, but we can just let me finish, and we still have a couple of minutes, and we can talk afterwards still. Okay, what was the result of our work? First of all, situational awareness of people in our company increased. So everyone or team members are more aware of what's happening in the team. Problems become more visible as they happen. We try not to hide, or due to this transparency mechanism, we don't hide the problems and they don't pop up suddenly on a production environment. Of course, it happens, but it happens less frequently. Collaborative planning. I don't know how many of you had a chance to listen to Mary Poppendick, but she gives an example with platoon and how collaborative planning is important in case of an army. And here, because team work with Tetris planning, and have everything visualized and try to spot the dependencies, this is exactly what collaborative planning is, due to the situational awareness. Common purpose. That's, I think, responsibility of a leader to give people common purpose. Because a leader is never able to make all the decisions. But if people understand the values, understand the vision, understand the purpose, they can make better decisions to be aligned towards the same place, or heading towards the same place. And this helps as well, or the transformation with it. And most importantly, pull system. Push system, according to me, is highly ineffective, because you are encouraging leaders or managers to micromanage people and make decisions by their own and assigning tasks. With pull system, it is people taking tasks and responsibility, because with freedom always comes responsibility, right? And of course, by the way, this is our CEO gives us quite a good support in the sense that he won't fire anyone for making a bad decision. He will fire someone for either making no decision or by making a bad decision several times, I mean, the very same decision, right? And not being able to learn. So this empowers people to make decisions, which I guess is also a foundation for scaling, regardless if it's less or safe or whatever. Okay, thank you.